Hi, I'm Virginia Eskin. I'm your host for the First Ladies of Music. Today's program is going to concern itself with music from the court, primarily the 18th and 19th centuries. As we said in our first program in early music history, women composers and performers had few opportunities to create. The church was not a welcoming environment either for performers or composers, and the royal princely houses became the only place where women could perform and create. By the 18th century, it became chic, even fashionable, to have a woman composer in your royal household. There were many important occasions, such as birthdays, feast days, important parties, and music was always required for those occasions. Talented women were trained and encouraged. They were even shown off by the great European and Russian courts. They were able to impress kings. They were taken under the wings of an empress or a queen, and it was considered chic and good to have women performers and composing music. The first woman composer on our program has a rather sad beginning, but a very good end. She is Maria Theresia von Paradis, born in 1759 into a family living in the court of the Empress Maria Theresa. Her father was the court secretary, and little Maria's middle name was in honor of the empress. Von Paradis became blind at the age of 3, but the empress saw her talent and provided a stipend, giving her the best music education possible. She studied piano with Antonio Salieri, who was the contemporary of Mozart. And by the age of 16, she was just astonishing the public with her talent as a keyboard virtuoso and a singer. And of course, it would have been a bit of a ploy, the fact that she was blind. So in that way, she was sort of being shown off. But one has to presume that the empress believed in her. And in fact, it's known that Mozart composed a concerto, Kochel 456 in B flat, for von Paradis. And Salieri, her teacher, composed his only organ concerto for her to play. This is all pretty heady stuff, and by 1783, she starts a 3-year concert tour with her mother. So being blind doesn't seem to be holding her down, and in fact, up in Paris in 1784, she meets Valentin Roy, a prominent educator who was working to try and help the blind so that they could be integrated into society, and she worked on a pegboard system that allowed her to set down her musical compositions. Now, the sad part is that all of this very rich life comes down to very few pieces. She composed a great deal of music. We know of 2 piano concertos, sonatas, songs, a trio, but unfortunately, her work has been lost. We do have 2 charming small pieces to share with you, however. The first work you'll hear by Maria Theresia von Paradis is a little Sicilienne for cello and piano. Now, a Sicilienne is a kind of a pastoral piece, very popular in the 17th and 18th centuries, and it's usually in slow 6/8 meter. Here is von Paradis' charming Sicilienne. You just heard the Sicilienne of Maria von Paradis for cello and piano, played by Evelyn Steinbach. Another work that is among the few of von Paradis to survive is a song she wrote in the late 1780s. Here is soprano Neva Pilgrim with harpsichordist Edward Smith performing Das Gärtnerliedchen, or the Gardener's Little Song, composed by Maria von Paradis. You just heard The Gardener's Little Song by Maria von Paradis, sung by Neva Pilgrim with harpsichordist Edward Smith. We've found a few more songs by von Paradis, some of the few works that have survived. Soprano Patrice Michaels with fortepianist David Schrader perform the German song Morning Song of the Poor Man, and then you'll hear mezzo-soprano Yoshi Tanaka with pianist Yasuko Mutsui performing Endlich winkt der Freund, two songs in German.
Wächst du mich zum neuen Jammer, Tag dem meine Sehnsucht rief, als in meiner kleinen Kammer Weib und Säugling ruhig schlief.
You just heard two songs in German composed by Maria von Paradis. Now we come to a real powerhouse of a woman, Élisabeth Jacquet de la Guerre. Born in 1666, she lived until 1729. De la Guerre was born into the family of Claude Jacquet, one of a long line of French instrument makers. He built organs and was an organist himself and harpsichordist. As a child, her talent came to be noticed by the Sun King, Louis XIV. She stunned the court with her ability to play and improvise at the harpsichord in a concert at Versailles. Court of Louis XIV was remarkable in its cultural and musical activities. He commissioned ballets by Lully, theater productions by Molière, instrumental music by Couperin, all going on near the end of Louis's long reign, 72 years, from 1643 to 1715. One of the ways women had power at this court was by virtue of talent. Jacquet de la Guerre was admired for her abilities as a performer and later as a composer and received the patronage of the monarch. But it's important to state that there was a tradition of women as performers or patrons by the time she was born. So she was helped by that, because up until then there was no tradition of women helping women. So women are starting to step up to the plate. De la Guerre, by virtue of her talent, expands the possibilities for women by composing and in forms that had not been done before. Élisabeth Jacquet was born into this tradition that was happening now in the court, and by virtue of her talent, she was able to get commissions. And we have examples of ballet music by her, opera, a cantata, a lot of keyboard works, and they're all dedicated to the king, naturally, because that would be the natural order of things. The first work we will hear of Élisabeth de la Guerre is her charming Rondo in G minor. It's performed by pianist Monica Ponce. That was Monica Ponce performing Elisabeth de la Guerre's Rondo in G minor. Elisabeth de la Guerre was proficient in writing for long forms, as we will hear in 3 movements from one of her cantatas. These are instrumental excerpts from the cantata Jonas. We'll hear the prelude, a recitatif with vocal soloist Judith Nelson, and a lively movement called Tempest, all performed by the Women's Philharmonic, conducted by Joanne Falletta. Women's Philharmonic, led by Joanne Falletta, has performed 3 sections of Elisabeth de la Guerre's cantata, Jonas. De la Guerre was a fine composer of chamber music as well. I'd like you to hear her 4-movement sonata for violin and continuo, performed here by members of an ensemble that specializes in early music, Bizzarie Armoniche. You just heard Elisabeth de la Guerre's Sonata in D for violin and continuo, played by Bizzarie Armoniche. You're listening to First Ladies of Music with Virginia Eskin over the WFMT radio network. Welcome back to First Ladies of Music. Now, our next woman is very interesting. She's the sister of Mozart, commonly known as Nannerl. Her real name was Maria Anna. She was a stupendous talent until Wolfgang appeared and he sort of upstaged her. So what's interesting about Nannerl Mozart is that even though she was very, very talented, and up until the time that Wolfgang's career eclipsed her and the father really got behind the son, and you might argue that his genius was much greater. What happened was Mozart's father didn't encourage Nannerl to become a performer, and Robert Levin, who's the most outstanding Mozart musicologist alive today, answered my query about why she's so unknown. He pointed out that another very fine pianist, Victoire Genami, who was a performer of Mozart's concertos, also was not encouraged to be much of a performer. And that was the idea that you protected your daughter, because if she was out performing, she was in coaches, she was sort of moving around from country to country. This was not considered a good thing and a proper thing. So you have a double whammy. You have women in the court getting patronage as long as it's all contained in the court experience. And Nannerl Mozart didn't marry into the court. I'd like to share a little bit of this figured bass that was excavated by Robert Levin. Now, these figured basses, the actual manuscript is made up of whole notes that sound like this. Now, this is what the realized figured bass sounds like. That was a realization of Nannerl Mozart's charming figured bass. I wish we had more music from her, and someday I'm sure it will be discovered in a library somewhere, and that will be a very big treat. We come now to Maria Szymanowska. She was born in 1790 and lived till 1831. And I really can relate to this woman because she had a good time. Her life wasn't that long, but she seems to have lived right to the hilt. She was a great pianist. She loved to travel. She debuted in Warsaw in 1810. She traveled throughout Europe. She even made it over to Russia. In fact, she died in Russia. She marries, but her husband's not interested in her career. So guess what? She leaves him. And she was the first Polish woman to gain a European reputation. And her parents were not musicians. So she's stepping out of the box, in a sense. She doesn't come from the cocoon of the court. She's a true soloist and is going to point the way towards that sort of performer as personality. And she also influenced Chopin. He was supposed to have been very taken when he first heard her etudes. She was considered just a brilliant person, brilliant looking, sounding, very charming. I want to play a little bit of her etude in F, and then I'm going to play a little bit of Chopin's etude in F, and I think they are very similar. Here's Szymanowska's. Here's Chopin's. What they both have is a brilliant, open sound, and my hands tell me that they're very, very similar. And I love the fact that she influenced Chopin. Here's another little demo. This is her Etude in E major. And here's one that Chopin wrote. It's the same configuration. So I think it's very telling, and Szymanowska wrote many pieces that are considered Polish national treasures, mazurkas, all kinds of waltzes. There's a beautiful Nocturne, which is very, very reminiscent of Chopin. What she does there is the same sort of thing. He always has a rolling bass. Then he adds the melody. Now listen to Szymanowska's Nocturne. It's a beautiful little piece, and it moves to a very complicated minor section in the middle. It's got the dark glints of a true nocturne. So it all combines to tell a very, very interesting story about Szymanowska. We're fortunate that a lot of the music exists, especially in Poland. So what she did primarily was to play keyboard music, and she was very, very good at that. I'd like to share two works composed by Maria Szymanowska. First, her Etude in E major, then the Nocturne in B flat. I just played for you Maria Szymanowska's Nocturne in B flat, and just before that, her little Etude in E major. While Maria Szymanowska wrote mostly for piano, she did write some chamber music and also was a fine composer of songs. And we've seen this before. Women composers of this time certainly understood the two genres, piano music and vocal music. And these lyric works really bridge the period from what's called classical, the time of Haydn and Mozart, to romantic, that of Brahms and Mendelssohn. We have 4 of her songs to share with you. Here are 2 songs in French, Peine et Plaisir, Pain and Pleasure, and Le Connais-tu, Do You Know It? They're sung by mezzo-soprano Yoshi Tanaka with pianist Yasuko Mitsui.
Plaisir
That was two French songs by Maria Szymanowska, sung by mezzo-soprano Yoshi Tanaka with pianist Yasuko Mitsui. We heard Peine et Plaisir and Le Connais-tu. Soprano Patrice Michaels has recorded songs by Szymanowska as well. First we'll hear the French Ballade, a song that explores the joys and pain of love, and then the short Italian song Se spiegar, which pretty much says the same thing.
Estere lusinghiero della mia felicità. Uno sguardo lusinghiero della mia felicità, della mia felicità.
Soprano Patrice Michaels with David Schrader playing the fortepiano in Maria Szymanowska's Ballade and Se Spiegar, both songs about love. I don't know whether you can hear gender in music. We've asked ourselves, can we tell if a woman has written this piece? Probably not, but I do know that all the music that we're going to be hearing in the upcoming programs and some of the music we've already addressed, there are a lot of interesting things happening, a lot of unusual qualities to the writing. It never stays in a sort of a static pattern. Our next show is going to address women of the Salon period. You'll hear lots of strong works by Fanny Mendelssohn and some others. I hope you'll join us. First Ladies of Music with Virginia Eskin is produced by Carolyn Pollan for 98.7 WFMT and the WFMT Radio Network. Steve Robinson is the executive producer. The engineer is Mary Mazurek. Thanks to Alice Abraham, librarian at WGBH Radio in Boston. And special thanks to Boston's Northeastern University for their generous support. I'm Virginia Eskin, inviting you to join me again next time for First Ladies of Music. This is the WFMT Radio Network.